I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Connie Walters. Here. Raleigh Nome.
Here.
Dale Householder.
Here.
Ron Walker.
Here.
Keith Van Ness.
Here. Okay, we established a quorum for tonight's meeting. Consent calendar. The approval of the November 19th, 2019 agenda and the approval of the November 4th, 2019 minutes. Are there any additions or corrections? Gary? Okay. Ron has made the motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I second.
Keith is seconded. Roll call, Betsy?
Walters.
Yay.
Nome.
Yes.
Householder.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Van Ness.
Yes.
Should we turn off the phone since no one's there?
They can dial in later if they
Okay.
want to.
Okay, at this time, public comments. Members of the public may speak to any matter not on the
Better get
agenda,
music.
limiting it to 2 minutes. Okay. And at this time, we're going to move into action items. I did receive a call this afternoon from Christy Hawthorne, who's the president of the EDC, thanking the members of the commission for their attentiveness to this matter and their investigation of the facts. So she wanted to express that to everybody here. At this time, I'll turn it over to our city administrator, Brett McMacken.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be back. I haven't been to a P&Z meeting in a while, just because Danny has taken over the reins of that, so it's good to be back. I promise I'm just here for a visit, and I'll be out the door. So tonight we have something that doesn't happen very often, especially for kind of a smaller community, is another proposed TIF. It's proposed TIF District Number 2. And so we're talking tonight about affordable housing, we're talking about infrastructure, road paving, water and sewer lines. We're looking at like a $2 million project. And so I know that there's been a lot of great dialogue over the past several months, and then just even recently in the past couple of weeks, where there's been some one-on-one meetings that have occurred to kind of discuss the merits of this project and see where we have an opportunity to provide some attainable housing for Hill City. So a lot of people have been involved in this project. EDC has championed a lot of it, so thank you to the EDC. Obviously, the Planning and Zoning Commission has tackled this quite a bit over time with the comprehensive plan, which kind of laid the foundation work for it. And then we also did that housing study about 2 years ago that really helped bolster the kind of the data that supports something like this. So now we've got to make sure that the numbers support it and that there is support from obviously the commission here and the city council in order to approve it and move forward. Another great partner that we have is Jim Skull, who's a developer who thinks this is a wonderful opportunity for the community to move forward on it. And then we have Toby Morris, who has been our financial person for this city. He's kind of done our general obligation bond and then restructuring of that in the past couple of years. So tonight we're going to hear from those people that are involved, and we'll have an opportunity towards the end for general discussion and questions and whatnot. But they just want to lay the roadmap of kind of where we've been, where we're currently at, and where we plan on going forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce Bob Lowry to come up and kind of give you the genesis of how this came to being.
Brett, before we start that, could we try this again? Alderman Minor was actually trying to dial in for this, and he couldn't get any sound, so we'll activate it again. I apologize to the commission, but I think it's important that if people want to participate, they have the opportunity to do so.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com. Please enter your
I'm sorry,
access
Bob.
code. If you are the host, press star now. Please enter your PIN. Thank you. There is one host
There it is.
in this conference.
Okay. Is there any way we can shut it down. The gentle music. I don't know why he said he kept saying it's Bill Miner and nobody was.
All participants are muted, and they can unmute themselves.
Okay, he's dialing in again right now.
All participants are muted.
That's probably why we couldn't, you know. So he's calling back in right now. Typically we don't have this problem, so.
Well, it's probably because it's a Tuesday, not a Monday.
That's what it is. Everybody's confused, including myself. Is that him?
There we go.
All right,
You there, Bill?
he's muted.
You might tell him he's muted.
All participants are unmuted.
Okay,
Okay, there we go.
you there, Bill?
Hello?
There you are.
Yeah, I kept saying I was muted.
You,
Sorry to interrupt.
you make it sound like that's a bad thing.
Yeah,
All right, thanks.
go
Bill.
ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, for the record, Bill Miner is on the conference call. Okay, Bob?
Thank you all. Good evening, and it's my pleasure to represent the EDC to this board. The EDC has been working on this project for a long time, it seems like, as long as I've been on the board. And we've had some setbacks, and then we've moved forward, and then we had setbacks and moved forward, but here we are. We're to the point where we're presenting it to you and hope we can get a good thumbs up for it from you, and we can move forward. I want to give you a background of this project and where we come from and where we think it's going, so you have a better idea. And then Toby will be following me with the details of the TIF itself and financially how that's going to work. So, as you know, you did the study. It's been a couple of years ago, and we helped with that study, and we know that from that study, it showed a need for some additional housing here in Hill City. In fact, it said that 35 to 50 housing units over a 5 period of time would be appropriate for Hill City. Seems like a lot for the size of Hill City, but it is what the study showed. It recommended developing a twin home development, a 10 to 15 lot affordable single family owner occupied home subdivision, as well as 18 market rate rental units. We know that lot availability was a big issue. It still remains a big issue in this town. And it also recommended developing new home ownership and financing programs. Well, about a year ago this time, we completed our own study. The Economic Development did that study, and the survey results showed, of the citizens, showed that 83 people said they were interested in housing in Hill City. 69 of them said they were interested in single family homes, 20 were interested in some kind of twin home or duplex, and 17 said they would move into an apartment. 27, almost 28% settled for inadequate housing due to the cost or due to a lack of availability when they moved here. Almost 19% found housing in other towns because they couldn't find housing here. Almost 37% would have had a much better commute if they could live here in Hill City than where they were able to find a home at. Almost 28%, or 22 of the people we surveyed, currently work but don't live here in Hill City, and said they'd move here if they could find adequate housing. So that really struck a chord with us, and we realized very quickly that lack of affordable housing is a problem for Hill City from an economic standpoint, and just from a community standpoint. Without adequate affordable housing, it's hard to have a community that's thriving. We also talked to the school system and found that 4 teachers were hired in 2019, this year, by the Hill City School District, and they looked for a place to live here in Hill City and had a very difficult time finding a place to live. And the superintendent of schools has, I'll quote him a little bit later, but has a real interest in this project because of lack of housing for teachers. We've also monitored the multiple listing services, and over the last year, there have been very, very, very few, I think 1 or 2 houses priced under $300,000 in Hill City that went on the multiple listing service. Now, there were some other sales involved of houses that were below that $300,000 mark, but they didn't even make the multiple listing service. They got snapped up so quick. So that tells us a lot about the demand. I can tell you, as a little sidebar, we did go to the Kroll's Market, and I did some other things around the church and other places to talk about this project and asked for support, and we passed a petition around. And I had, every single time I spent time at the grocery store working on that petition, which was 6 times, I had multiple people come up and say they really wish that we had better housing in Hill City and would buy something if we had it. So we know there's a demand for this. So what did we do about it? Well, we started looking for land, and we found a piece of land up on Top of Hill Avenue. It's in a residential neighborhood. You probably have been by there if you study this at all, which I'm sure you have. It's a piece of undeveloped land that needs some work. It needs sewer, water, it needs paving streets, and it needs sidewalks and all the things that make a neighborhood. But it's a piece of undeveloped land that we could buy. And at the time, it was priced relatively high, and thanks to some real good work from some of our realtors that are on the EDC, we were able to get that price down to a much more manageable level, and we were able to purchase the land. We had an angel investor that had some money and was willing to put it up and make that sale happen. So we found a local developer, and that's Jim Skull. Jim, I'm so impressed with Jim because he's doing this, in my opinion, as much out of his heart and for the good of Hill City as he is for doing anything from a profitable standpoint. He's obviously going to make some money on this deal or he wouldn't do it. But I think what's really in his heart is that it's a good deal for Hill City and he wants to help the city out, and he's been extremely good to work with so far. The development plan includes 22 single-family homes. They'll be priced between $200,000 and $250,000. 12 twin homes priced between $175,000 and $200,000. We did consider apartments, but the problem with apartments is the city does not have enough water pressure to support a 2-story or above apartment complex without some additional work and support within that apartment complex to provide the pressure, which would have priced it out of the market. So we also wanted to include some covenants that would restrict it to owner-occupied only, at least for a period of time. We're thinking of having a HOA that would provide some rules and some covenants to go along with that would help enforce the HOA and help us create an owner-occupied neighborhood. We also knew that we needed to create a TIF because the TIF would allow us to price the homes in that affordable range. Without the TIF, the price of the individual homes would go up by about $33,000 to $35,000 a piece for each home. And that would price them out of that affordable range. So the only way we can keep that price down so that people can afford to buy the homes is to have a TIF. When we're done, we estimate at today's values, if it were done today, a value of somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 to $8 million that we've created within that neighborhood, which I think is a big deal from a tax standpoint for Hill City down the road. We've also been working to develop a first-time homebuyers class, and we've been working with local banks and with the title companies to create some incentives for people that are buying their first home so that they can purchase their first home with the least amount of struggle to do it as possible, still qualify, but get through the process and have some success at owning a home. The homes will be built, each one of the individual homes, there'll be two sizes, one a little smaller, one a little bit bigger, but we're thinking that they'll all have two-car garages so that their junk, we all have, can be stored inside instead of out on the yard. And we expect that the townhomes will also have adequate storage for parking and as well as a garage space so that we can keep the neighborhood looking clean and nice. The property currently under contract will be purchased by the developer when the TIF is completed and approved. And again, I'd say this, that the project just simply cannot move forward without the TIF. We're going to recommend that, based upon the developer, that the developer actually is going to put in $1.2 million in infrastructure improvements and another $800,000 in interest costs to bring that total cost up to about $2 million. The TIF will be paid back. We estimate starting about year 3, we'll start having enough taxes coming in above what was being paid before we started the development, that it'll start getting paid back, and we estimate somewhere 10 to 15 years, but state law says we can't exceed 20 years. We're going to be paving roads in that area, installing sidewalks, water, and sewer improvements. And I think probably Brett or Toby can talk a little bit more about some of the improvements to the city infrastructure that's going to be as a result of this program. I'd like to stress that the TIF itself does not raise tax valuations on property. Rather, the building of a home on a property raises the tax valuation, and the difference between the new value and the old value is what funds the infrastructure through the TIF. The old value, before the home was purchased and before the development occurred, will still be there for the school and the city until the TIF is paid off. Some quotes. Blake Gardner, our Hill City Superintendent. While we do not currently receive state aid, the way our school can get into the funding formula is by increasing our enrollment. We also have teachers that would love to live in Hill City, but cannot find housing. Finally, even if the TIF didn't increase our enrollment at all, or create a single home for a teacher, it still will be advantageous over the long term because it will grow the valuation of our city, which increases our tax base, which benefits the city and the school system. Also, you should know we circulated a petition, and some of you, I think, have signed it. And we had approximately 300 people sign that petition in support of this TIF. Like I said earlier, I had many people, each time I did it, where they would come up to me and say, it's about time we did something. This is really needed. I had very few people, maybe one a day out of 20 or 30 that signed a petition or more, said they wouldn't sign the petition, and most of them said they just don't sign anything. That's why they're not going to sign that petition. Not that they had anything really big against it, they just didn't sign stuff. We also sought out the Pennington County Commissioners and asked them to look it over and to give us some support in terms of a resolution. It's not that they've approved it officially yet. They will have to approve it eventually. But for right now, they passed a resolution saying that they do support the program and do support our TIF. So what do we really want? I think we want what you want. A really nice new neighborhood of owner-occupied homes filled with a variety of families and individuals that want to call Hill City home. That'll benefit every business in town. It'll benefit the city. It'll benefit the school system. It's a win-win for everyone. And we're doing it because we've got a developer that's willing to take the risk. And I think that's something we all ought to be really happy about, because he doesn't take risks lightly. I know that in him. But he's taking a risk by helping us and funding, or putting the money up front for the TIF, and for him to get paid back, it's got to work. And I really appreciate the risk that Jim has taken. So with that, Brett, would you just comment briefly about what's going on with this, the infrastructure improvements to the city and what that's going to look like?
Yeah, it might be easier just for me to show up on the screen here. Let me make sure it's kind of where we need it. I'm gonna kill the lights here on this side. So, Bob is correct. There's $1.2 million worth of improvements that are scheduled for this TIF, and then another $800,000 to essentially the interest on that money. So it comes to $2 million. All of that, all of those funds are to pay for water lines, sewer lines, road work, asphalt, curb and gutter, those kinds of things. So they're not, that money isn't being used to build houses.
Or purchase the land?
Or purchase the land. That money is just for city improvements. So once those are done, installed, inspected, accepted, approved, then the city will take ownership of that new infrastructure. Okay, so that infrastructure comes back to us. And again, Bob said it's paid off through the TIF as the land values or the assessments increase. We'll get that increment to pay off. And so eventually it'll be paid off, and all that new tax money that went to pay the TIF will now be annual money coming into our coffers. So this is the subject property that's outlined here. So the plan is to extend this road through here and then have it reconnect with Top of Hill. So this is a new stretch of road that would get created, would be paved, curb and gutter, sidewalks. This Top of Hill would be paved all the way down to Quinn and down to Shoe Rooster Drive. There'd be a little bit of work that was be done on this hill because there's kind of that steep thing. We'd have to get that down to city specs. So there'd be a little bit of excavation in through there. And then coming around Bud's Drive, that one's been ready for paving for quite some time. That one would get paved through this project as well. So that's the paving aspect of it. Then we would come down and we would pave somewhere approximately down in here to pave down on Smoky Drive. Now beyond that, we've got water and sewer lines. Currently, we've got a sewer line that comes up through here and another one that comes on the back side of these properties. Those would be extended to service the development. And then there would also be another sewer line that would come from here and wrap around and come down that would help service the Shoot Rooster restaurant and these properties up here. So that's another benefit to us. The last, and I think the most benefit to our system and something that's needed for this project is water line looping. So we have a water pressure challenge on this side of town. We also have kind of a capacity issue, and the capacity or the quantity of water, we're going to be building that reservoir down further south here up on the hillside. We've secured the easement with the train. I'm working with Rural Development to jumpstart their process again, just because we've been waiting for this easement to be signed. So I'm working with them. The funding's already in place for all of that, so we're working through that. So that reservoir is a big piece as far as the quantity of water that's available, the capacity. But the other part is the looping. So we'll have a couple of loops. We'll bring up through Quinn and loop through this area, and that will help with our water pressure concerns. And then we'll also loop through Top of Hill back up to the loop here. And so we'll have a complete loop coming through here. So we don't, the whole goal with water lines within the city is that we don't have a dead end. We don't just send water to the pipe and it just gets capped off. If we can loop it, we have much better ability to provide the quantity of water and the pressure of water to the residents that need it. The other benefit is that if we have a trouble spot that we need to excavate, usually we've got a valve in pretty close proximity where we can just shut off water here and here. Most everybody still has water while we effect repairs. So there's a few upsides to that water element to it. So, but those are the infrastructure things that would be taken care of through the TIF dollars. There's also some other things in there. I think there's a line item for some lighting and a few other things that are kind of miscellaneous just to kind of cap off the development. So But those line items are listed in your project plan.
Brett, can I ask a question?
You bet.
If those infrastructure costs end up exceeding 1.2 million, how will that cost overrun be
Right.
handled?
So that might be a question for Toby when he gets up here. I might save that one for him. I will just say that between conversations with Jim Skull and with the EDC and with Toby and with the engineer and everybody, we hope that we've accounted for all of the expenditures, because once it's kind of locked in, it's problematic to change that number or have it a floating number. The expectation with the TIF is you're essentially pledging to do what you said you would do. Okay? But I'll let Toby give a more permanent answer to that from his perspective, but it's a great question. So
They've already drill some cores in the dirt to find out where the rock base was. I mean, we've done a lot of work ahead of time. And Jim, because he's done this before, knows what to look for and what to do. And I'm pretty confident that we've got things pretty well buttoned up.
You said that the infrastructure will be owned by the city. At what point? Not till the thing is completely paid off, or when it's done? Who has ownership at
So-
what points?
yeah, so I know from a city perspective, there has to be, obviously the installation occurs, there has to be an inspection, and there has to be a formal acceptance of that. I would think that it would be somewhat tied to the dollar amount. Is that, I don't know what the progression or the, between the TIF still being out there.
It would just be as normal as any other development with or without a TIF, that once it's inspected and accepted, you know, I don't want to speak for Jim, you don't want to be in the ownership of utilities.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Good.
Yeah, so the TIF could still be out there,
Correct.
needing to
We
be
just gotta
paid
pay
off.
for it.
Right, gotcha. Okay.
And it's not you.
So it follows a slightly different timeline, but the main thing from our perspective is that it's put into the ground, inspected, and then formally accepted, so that it's our responsibility to take it from there.
Okay.
Last, I'll just leave it, and then you can ask more questions, unless you have one for me.
I do, Bob.
Okay.
That the EDC survey that was done, maybe you mentioned this, I didn't catch it. When was that done?
It was done last year, in 2018.
2018,
And
okay.
we actually finished it up in the fall of 2018.
And the petition that was circulated, who were were the signatories, you know, were they all Hill City residents?
No, they were
State of
not
South
all Hill
Dakota?
City residents, but they were all people that reside within a reasonable distance of Hill City and shop and do everything they do in Hill City. I didn't have anybody sign it from California. They were all from this area.
Okay.
Some of them lived outside of the city limits. It was interesting, Raleigh, some of them said, we built a really nice home 20 years ago in the hills. We're getting up a little older in age, and we're thinking about the possibility of buying a home in Hill City and being a little closer to town that's a little easier to take care of. And this project could be a good fit for something like that. So,
Time to downsize.
yeah.
I have a question. The TIF district will include a number of different tracks.
Yep.
Tract A, Tract B, or Parcel 1, Parcel 2, Parcel 3, and Parcel 4.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And but the TIF is only going to be in effect for Parcel 1. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah, so let me show you on the map. Great question. So this is the development area where the new subdivision will go, but this isn't the TIF district. The TIF district is actually this piece plus this long piece of ground that's undeveloped, and then these two pieces as well. So it's those, 4 pieces all together. So when we were looking at this, we were looking at surrounding properties, and we looked at Bud's Drive and said, well, could we include Bud's Drive into the tax increment district? And the question is, and the short answer is yes, you could, but what tax increment are you going to get from those houses that's already developed? So unless they were putting additions onto their home, or, you know, for some reason their appraised value goes up significantly, there's really not an increment to capture to pay off an infrastructure cost. And so you really kind of steer clear of already developed properties, if that makes sense. So, but the reason we looked at these is that these people are going to benefit from this water line looping, just like this development will. There's some challenges even just down in this. I know there's an elevation jump that goes from, there's kind of a shelf here that drops down to this lower piece. This property will benefit from that water line looping and having that over there. They'll benefit also from having at least partially paved roads. It won't be paved all the way around, but they'll get some paved parking or driving lanes. And then the sewer line enhancements. I know this upper shelf will benefit from having that, as the sewer needs to flow in this direction downhill. So those will make those 2 lots or 3 lots or however many up on that shelf more developable. And so what will happen is that as this is developed, if the TIF is still active and the property values are increased here from development, this TIF can gain that increment from this development to go pay off that infrastructure. Okay? And so, you know, obviously when this gets, you know, with the 30 to 34 homes here, that development, their property taxes, as it's developed and improved, will go to paying this TIF. So everything, you know, any increase is going to go pay off the TIF, and then the TIF is paid off, and then, you know, taxes flow per normal then.
So all of those parcels are being purchased as part of the...
No, they'll just be in the district.
Yeah, this is...
The purchase involves only that one piece.
Correct, yep, this is the only piece that was purchased, and this is the only piece that will be developed with Jim Skull. These other pieces have, you know, will have that TIF district attached to them. I mean, they could develop, you know, if they wanted to. But that increment would come from here and help support the infrastructure in the area.
The taxes on that property won't go up on those 3 pieces. Rather, what'll happen is as houses are developed, the value goes up, and the value drives that tax increase. So it's the tax increase from where it's at today to where it ends up being after it's developed that's funding the TIF.
If I remember right, one of those pieces had, I think, 2 houses planned for up next to the road, and then 6 trailer houses down below. Which piece is that?
Piece on the end.
That's the middle
second
one.
one
This
over,
one.
that long.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. Yeah, that one, that came before you as a commission, what, about a month and a half ago? I
Yeah,
think,
to
ish.
change the zoning. The zoning was
Mhm.
approved for multifamily, but I have not heard anything from the developer as of this point.
Okay. So that would be something right off the bat that would go to support the payment off, paying off the TIF.
Yep, as the valuation increases, whatever tax increase, whatever increment increase would go to satisfy the costs of putting in the infrastructure that would benefit it later. Yep.
Some of you may be wondering if this passes, when do we start? And I've heard through the grapevine, and Jim can probably confirm this, that he'd really like to get started like yesterday maybe, but probably in December sometime. So you can look to see, you'd look to see if this passes, to see some activity very quickly on this. So. Any other questions for me?
I just want to commend the EDC for the work that I've observed them doing, Chris and the whole staff, your board of directors. It's just phenomenal what work you guys have put into this.
Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to Toby. Toby, it's all yours.
Well, I get the more formal part of the presentation, but as a quick side note, I want to commend the EDC as well. In fact, I used them as an example when I spoke at the housing conference the other day. And I had to say, when the word petition comes out, because I always represent the city, your heart sinks, but in a good way, this petition, I think, is something for other cities to follow. Because they are getting tougher to do because there is so much misunderstanding. And with that, one thing I really want to stress is with a TIF, there's no dumb questions. So by any means, as I go through this, if something's not making sense, it's important, I stop, explain it, and go through the document. A couple things were mentioned so far tonight. And the most important thing of a TIF is people ask, is this going to raise my taxes? And the answer is no, because if you have it certified by the state of South Dakota as economic development affordable housing, it is that. I can confirm that I am in receipt of a letter, actually dated to date, was supposed to have it last week from Department of Revenue, I forwarded on to Brett, that said this has been pre-certified with Department of Revenue as affordable housing. So they've reviewed the plan, they reviewed everything else. And so with that, maybe I think what I'll do is I'll just walk through the plan and go through on what I would call the highlights. We're covering a lot of what's required by codified law, but really it comes down to, I think, how this is going to be spelled out. The numbers are always the most important thing. When we look at this, the number one thing you have to look at codified law is saying, does the value of this TIF district, meaning those parcels that are in there, exceed 10% of the valuation of the city? And the answer is no. Currently, right now, the value of all that land is at $422,000. That's been pre-certified by Department of Revenue, but actually gets certified through Pennington County. So those numbers have already been vetted at that time. So that's one of the checklists that we go into. One of the other bigger checklists that we go into is how do we get to the 2 million? The 2 million at this point has been engineer estimates. Raleigh, you'd ask what happens if it goes over the $1.2 million. Jim has a lot of bake sales at that point. That's his problem. But in all sincerity, it becomes Jim's issue, and so that's where we take a lot of careful consideration. But we also build in the contingency at that. As we all know, living West River, there's this bedrock thing and a couple others that unforeseen that happen where your contingencies rise a little bit higher. We built in the interest cost of $800,000, and that was I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but what I did, like if you look on page 20, the $800,000 is the principal of the $1,221,000 from the engineer's estimate at 5.5% out to the life of the TIF, which can go out to 2039. Remember, with the TIF, everything is compounding. If Jim decides not to build for the first year or two, that candle is lit at both ends, and it becomes more of a liability as he decides not to build. As soon as that infrastructure is in, the city really, if you want to say, has received the benefit of that asset. And it's in Jim's best interest to build that out as soon as possible. What I have found over time with amortization is interest rates fluctuate up and down. So I take a look at where we're at historically, where we've been. And 5.5%, TIFs are a risky loan. It's not a more common loan that you find. It's loans that typically only varsity developers are able to achieve. And that 5.5, I would say, whether historical and today's rates, is right in line at that point. So if something goes to heck, we get back to an 80s crisis, rates jump up to 12-14%. The city is locked in that they will never reimburse more than that 5.5% at that time. A TIF expires when one of two things happen, either in 2039 or if that 2 million has paid out quicker. So what I want to do then is what I looked at is, if you look at page 23, I worked a lot with Jim's team and say, what is a feasible build-out schedule? And we looked at it and said, okay, 4 twin homes, 2 homes in the first year in 2020. Now remember, that's not really valued until 2022 when that revenue starts coming in. We looked at homes then in 2 and 4, and you can see the progression as it goes down to fully get those built out to the 30-34 range. If you miss a beat in these first 2 or 3 years, that total amount, that following page on 24, where I show projecting at 2.3 million, that shrinks up in a hurry, because what you don't capture in your first couple years affects you the whole way through because it's compounding out, and that's where the risk is associated. But once again, there's no risk to the city on this part. And I'm gonna stop right there and see if there's any questions. Main thing is to say that we've quantified our projections as best as we can, but projections are projections. So we bring this all together, and this can be sometimes a little misunderstanding, and I really like to go through this part, and I'm gonna flip back to page 9, and the reason the pages are all over is the way the codified law asks you to spell it out, to me, doesn't quite make as much sense as the actual presentation I like to give the public body, so you can see how it flows from chapter to chapter. We have a line item in there called discretionary costs and grants. For years, I would battle legislative audit in terms of, they would say this has to be a public improvement. Well, I don't think we would disagree that road, water, sewer is a public improvement. Well, legislative audit would say the true public improvement means the city bids it out and the city holds the contract. Well, if you're holding that contract, I've now taken you from offense to defense because you're in a liability situation. And I would explain the legislative audit, which didn't go very far. So what we did is we changed the law in 2012 to say, look, let's call it what it is. We're granting Jim and his team the ability to earn up to $2 million to offset his costs. That is for him to go out and to achieve, call it a coupon if you want at that point. But what we've done is we haven't put city in the harm's way, because if something happens to Jim in midstream during this construction and you're holding the contract, you now become liable. So that's how we associate this in here. Plus, the IRS recognizes the grant as an eligible cost. So when the TIF plan is approved, we approve it with the built-in interest rate of the 800 and of the million two of the discretionary costs. Betsy's really going to like it from auditing purposes, because when you come in 3 years and let's say 110,000 has been paid out of the TIF, what's the liability? $1,890,000. So we're not doing amortization tables. We're not figuring out, well, the payment was made on March 16th this year and November over here. It's $1 in, it's $1 out. We don't have to worry about interest rates going to 6.5%, and that number jumping all around. So we've tried to really simplify it down, which the auditors will really like as well at that point. So that brings us now to where we're at today in the process. The process, as we've started out, requires a public hearing tonight. Planning and zoning's technical role in this is to approve the boundaries in the district and to recommend it up. What I like about this process here is it's another vetting process, another set of eyes and ears to look this over and say, hey, this might not pass the smell test, as I call it, figure this out. But I think you can see there's been a lot of vetting that has gone into this, and a lot of different eyes have looked it over. And I could gladly go into any more specifics. That's, you know, the 10,000 foot view on that part. I think what Brett explained, it's what I like on this, it's a way to get improvements done in the city with the developer's assistance, the developer's taking the risk, but you guys are passing that on to make it a true partnership. Questions, concerns? Bake sale items.
I have one question.
Yeah.
The development starts and it is so popular that it's sold out in 9 years, and the loan is paid in 10 years, or 11 years, say. Do we still have the price tag of that 800,000? Or does...
Of that interest?
Yes. How does that work?
Well, what happens is the costs are all incurred up front, and that becomes an actual hard cost for Jim that he's going to borrow against. If those sell out really within 5 years, the TIF pays for itself over the next 18 years. If those developments do not sell out within the next 4 to 5 years, it may take on a normal amortization 22 or 24 years, but at the end of 20 years, that TIF expires regardless. If you pay out $2 million in 10 years, the TIF expires. If you pay out $1.5 million in 20 years, the TIF expires.
Yeah, I understand all that.
Yep.
So the 800,000 is a price tag on top of the 1.2 million. And the TIF is the 2 million
Correct.
regardless.
The 800,000 is the
When it's
cost
sold
of the
out or anything
financing.
like that. It's not something like we get the interest back because it
No.
sold out, that's what I was just clarifying.
Toby, if this is a huge success, like Connie says, which we all hope it will be, could there be a future TIFs coming into play then for any, if there was, the demand was still there on these other parcels for
I would say yes. Once something starts to become proven, then you'll get maybe more people to look at this. But as we've stated earlier, the risk of that first time in, it is quite high on that risk, on that part. And I think something to really point out is when this is a huge success in 5 years and it's all sold out, that debt is still there. That debt hasn't gone away, and Jim lives with that debt until it's paid off. And so what I've seen in other communities is once these start and that catalyst happens, then future TIFs do come in. We've done them in Brookings where we put them in and then we put a moratorium on them. But it was mainly to get that catalyst going, and that's up to each individual city.
We have had one TIF and it was successful.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that was years and years ago. Revenue didn't even have that one.
2008 or 2000.
Yeah, that one was approved in 2006, and it paid off in
2012.
2012.
Yeah, it was just a small little one, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. But it gives the community a sense of knowing that it works.
Absolutely.
So if these other parcels being part of this TIF, as far as within the TIF area, if that demand was there in the future, then the fact that they're part of this current, this TIF district, could a future TIF potentially be involved to develop affordable housing in those parcels?
That are within the TIF area.
Right.
You can TIF on top of a TIF. I don't recommend it because the first TIF, Jim's TIF, is the one that has all the expense incurred, so he's first in line for that revenue. The second TIF, before that revenue comes in, has to wait for the first TIF to be paid off. So you end up, you can end up with a 30-year TIF out there, which is not the intent.
Okay.
But we see here, these parcels have received a lot of benefit from the original one with the infrastructure, with the intent that they should sell out, with then the intent that increments should alleviate that debt.
Yeah, you answered my question there when
Okay.
you said that first TIF has to be paid off
Correct.
before, yeah, okay.
It gets really goofy when you TIF over a TIF.
You have a question, Toby, Brian?
Me.
Yes.
Do you remember, Brett, what the increment was for the Sunset Creek? By chance?
I don't.
Or
Yeah, I don't.
station?
Not off the top of my head.
So what you would have before you would be a resolution that approves the district, the boundaries, recommends the plan then up to the city council. There's two more steps that are involved with this. One is to approve the plan formally then at the city side, but then two, to enter into a developer's agreement. And the developer agreement basically states, hey, all the infrastructure is going to be put in until city spec. They understand that this is, for affordable housing, and it just sort of lays it out that we're not going to have any mechanics liens or anything out there, just responsible developer. Nothing that we'd ever associate with Skull, but nonetheless, we still just put in on a paper format.
Toby, could you give us a little bit of information relative to this type of TIF that we're getting now? So I think when everybody talks about what we've had in the past, I don't think it was the same type of TIF. Could you talk about this affordable housing TIF? Yeah, and what that really means?
So there's a couple different classifications of TIF. You have industrial. That's the original of the TIF was made. As the evolution of TIFs in the state happened, we petitioned Governor Rounds in early 2000 to allow economic development. economic development at that time was something that had to be zoned commercial. Well, as progression of it came along, we then realized in 2015 that housing was a statewide crisis. And the reason and the importance of the classification is you can have it four classifications: industrial, economic development, housing, or other. Well, the other is a tough one, because what happens is you can always do a TIF. The state of South Dakota says you can't do a TIF, but if you don't follow in with commercial, economic development, or affordable housing, that increment that we talk about, long story short, will raise people's taxes because it's spread out among the base, which basically translates to we're all unemployed if we're going to raise somebody's taxes. So there was very few of those that were done. It was meant to keep TIFs in line so that cities were not TIFing all down Main Street, calling it economic development when really is fulfilling their capital improvement plan. And so that's where the state has stepped up to more of a review process. We don't necessarily have a TIF police in the state, which I think is good because it still allows you as Hill City to say housing is economic development, and Eagle Butte to say I need a veterinarian as economic development. But we still have some guidelines to fall within on that. The ultimate Trump rule, if we want to talk about Trump, but the ultimate rule that the state has is if they don't think that it's economic development, they'll just classify it as other, then you have to go back to your constituents and say you're raising taxes, which is dead on arrival.
So this wasn't necessarily a type of TIF that would have been available back in 2006. This is a new category,
Correct.
Affordable housing.
Correct.
So Toby, you've obviously worked on TIFs for quite some time. You mentioned Governor Rounds, and then doing that amendment to the rules to create those other categories. How many TIFs have you worked on? Do you know? You crisscross the state, don't you?
I was Lincoln County last night and here today. Yeah. I suppose I do about 80% of the TIF work in the state, and the other 20%, I go in and fix what my competitors have done. I hate to say it like that, but it's I develop part of I'm one of the senior advisors to the governor's office for their debt, so I develop a very close relationship with them on what economic development is in the state. My background's GOED. I'm out here with you guys at night, and I was in Belfouche on a rail park earlier, so trying to give them the sight, ears, and sound of what's going on in the state.
Thank you.
Do that.
Can you tell us a little history about Skoll and the TIFs and his developments? Just so that when we talk to the public, so they have he's done this 7 times, or he's done it in Rapid, he's done it in the same type of thing.
Maybe I can let Jim speak to that. I can say from somebody on the government side, work multiple different times with them, and every time it comes completed on budget, and people are happy to be proud of it. And I'll tell you this, I'm very particular because a lot of people come to me on TIFs, and I say this a lot, but if it's not the varsity developer, I don't want my name attached to it, because you get TIFs that go upside down and everybody gets blamed for it, and I don't want to do that because you have a fly-by-night developer. And I look at it as if you weren't developing pre-08, I don't know if I want to work with you, because 08 took away the junior varsity.
So I've done some of my own research, but I feel pretty confident, but I'd like to be able to tell anybody that asks me.
You bet.
Well, this is something that's done repetitive.
I would like to tag on to that, Connie, maybe from a personal standpoint. I've known Jim Skoll Construction for 30 years, 30 plus, and had the chance to work with them on a number of projects in Custer State Park. And I'm not blowing smoke here. I don't have any need or reason to do that, but I can honestly say that Skoll Construction is probably the best company that we worked with, or that I had the chance to work with.
You hate to sound like there's a conflict of interest, but I joke around a little bit in the state too. If you don't have a conflict of interest, I don't know if I want to work with you, because it means you really haven't done much. And so, I work a lot with Jim and his company.
Yeah,
But-
everything I've read has been
Yeah.
stellar. There's not a question there. I was just, as I'm talking to somebody that might ask me,
Mhm.
I can say, well, he's done, I know of a couple of he's done. But I have to say that he's done about so many. And
I can tell you this, we wouldn't have a vet's home in Hot Springs if it were not for Jim Skull. I can guarantee you that. So,
Chairman Dale, are you taking questions?
Yes, if you have a question for Toby, please go ahead.
I apologize if I'm interrupting, but could you explain on page 13, the bottom couple paragraphs? I know I've heard you say that the TIF won't affect the monies going to the school, but I'm confused with some of this language because it talks about funding through state aid, and I'm under the impression that the Hill City School doesn't receive state aid. And I may be wrong, and I hope Blake is in the audience that could correct me, but I just want to make sure that we're certainly not doing anything that would hurt the school.
yeah, for sure, I can address that. That is sort of a catch-all language in there because the schools that do receive state aid, you're one of a handful in the state that does not receive state aid, basically because the valuation is high and the enrollment is low. And as Blake made the comment, I think, in the testimonial, in order for him to start to receive state aid, they need their enrollment to go up. Enrollment's then based on housing and so forth. But we put that in there because there are some people who are always concerned that, is this going to take away from my school? Well, unfortunately, your school doesn't receive anything. And so if anything, this is going to help your school get closer to receive that state aid. If the school did receive state aid, the other reason for putting that in there is it would not affect their general fund and it would not affect people's taxes. Does that help? First time caller, long time listener?
Yes, thank you.
You bet. I have a question for Rush. Yeah.
When you say that it doesn't affect the school funding, what you're really saying is it won't change the school funding, but it will delay any increase in school funding until the TIF is paid off.
Sort of, yes. Because our state has moved to more of an enrollment revenue base, is getting away from the valuation, every student on a general fund basis, if they receive state aid, is worth about $5,200 to $5,500. We have to get that enrollment up for them to qualify for that state aid. And so the valuation is not the driving force for the school, but rather the enrollment is to get that up. Because
But it is right now for Hill City,
to get the enrollment up.
the valuation.
Correct, the valuation sort of works against them because they have such a high valuation for the low enrollment. Sort of like Oneida, Agar Blunt, Oneida, $1 billion valuation for 180 students. So they don't qualify. Dakota Valley, Dakota Dunes. Incredible valuation, lower enrollment.
I'm not, Ron, let me address it another way too, is that the current valuation on that land, those taxes on that valuation that's currently on the land will continue to go to the school.
Correct. Status quo.
Only the increment above that current valuation for the period of time until the TIF is paid off will go to pay off the infrastructure.
That's right.
So in a way, we're making an investment in the future by creating the TIF, allowing that TIF to get paid off, and when the TIF is paid off, that money now becomes available
Right.
through valuation.
Good point.
Okay, but when will the increased evaluation be taken into account by the state in figuring the state aid? As it,
When the
when
TIF
the TIF is
expires.
paid off?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like planting an oak tree, we're not getting shade for several years.
Kudos on first-time caller, long-time listener. I don't know if you've used that before or not, but that's good.
I travel 40,000 miles a day, there's a lot of radio going on.
It was on Yankton County yesterday.
Yeah, no, I'm not too well liked down there, I stay away from those folks.
I have a question that I see as a safety issue on this. When you first go into Shoe Rooster Drive, the first 500-600 feet is a very narrow portion. We're increasing with this new district, we're increasing the number of a lot of traffic on that area. Trucks that service the Cruels Market come in that way and come around so they can back into the dock on Cruels Market. And when a big semi 18-wheeler comes through that narrow portion, there's not much room for other cars. They have to stop and wait. Why wasn't this taken into consideration in the new infrastructure for a safety factor?
So that's probably not a Toby question, it's probably a me question.
Okay.
So we did look at that, and if I can, let me zoom in here a little bit. Zoom too far. Oh, we lost Bill. Lost the money.
He died because he
He might
Oh,
be
if we
done.
lost Bill or what?
Yeah.
So this was, and it's a great question, this was discussed previously, and the concern is right here, I think, Dale, right? Is that you've got this transition point, see, the road comes in perpendicular to the highway, and then it turns aggressively over here. And so the question is, well, can we widen this, can we improve it? And I think the answer is yes. We had received some pricing, I think, from Jim Skull's crew about addressing that, and they were looking at widening the street, obtaining a little bit more right-of-way, because you can see right here, these lines designate not the width of the street, but the width of the right-of-way that is owned by the city. So we got a fairly wide right-of-way here, and then all of a sudden it narrows up right here. And so we'd have to do essentially some land purchase in order to increase that right-of-way first. That would be step one. Step two is widening out the road. And so we're looking at, what, $250,000, if I remember correctly.
For that piece?
For all of that, for
It was almost-
acquisition.
I think it was almost 400,000.
Oh, it was 4?
Yeah, 397, something like that.
Okay. So there's a few elements to it. At the end of the day, I made a comment that said, look, at the end of the day, even if we widen this road out, we're still going to have this very aggressive corner coming into that. Even if we widen this out, we're going to have a very aggressive corner coming into it. This isn't the problem right here. The corner, this little curve, I should call it, is really the concern. I think it's associated to a transition point. And so if it was $300,000 or almost $400,000, we looked at that price tag, and for what the fix is of widening it and purchasing some land in order to make it wider, it didn't seem like it was a good option to fix that problem, because we would still have an aggressive curve, but just with a wider street. And so I believe that there is probably a better solution to get this addressed. And we haven't contacted anybody, no owners, we wanted to see kind of how this goes, but to me, it makes sense to straighten this road out and maybe have it connect over here if that's possible with the DOT. There's a lot of different people to talk to, that we've got a good intersection and we've got a kind of a straight shot, to get traffic onto it, so they don't have like this big kind of decision to make when they're coming on it. So I just don't think spending $300,000 or whatever that price tag is going to give us the result that we want. I think there's a better solution that we can brainstorm out there of trying to unbend that road.
Still a safety issue. Needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I forget how many years ago we discussed that intersection, and I had a discussion with the sheriff's office of how many accidents or whatnot have been reported in that area. I think this was like a conversation that happened 6 or 7 years ago. They had no documentation of an accident occurring there. That doesn't, but they don't document near misses. And obviously, it is kind of a challenging little area to connect. I think that we're going to have to address it, but spending $300,000 for not a significantly bettered scenario, I think that's a lot to pay for something you're not real happy with.
Welcome.
Okay, other questions?
If you are the host, press star now. Please enter your PIN. Thank you. There is one host and one participant in this conference. Please announce yourself.
Okay, Bill, we got you back. Hopefully.
Okay, back to you, Toby.
Yes.
Any other questions for Toby?
I have a design question. It may not be for
No.
you, Toby, but this might be more appropriately addressed to Jim. In the layout of on this parcel, is there any green space incorporated into that, Jim, as far as like a central play area for kids or anything like that?
Possibly. It's kind of a moving target, if you want to know. We've talked about different lot configurations. We're still dealing with the power line back there. If we can get that moved back, it adds to it. It's kind of not well placed for what we want to do. So there's been kind of we took the apartments out, and there's probably a corner back there where the two lots, and that probably the northwest corner are really large. And we talked about lopping off, those lots. They don't need to be that large, and maybe we could put like a half-acre little playground back there with access. It's just, I think it'd be kind of fun, for the neighborhood, really. But so that's a possibility.
I mean, it would be an enhancement for the neighborhood.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're able to do that. The other comment I got is I commend you on the two-car garages. I think that's really a positive to have that built into it.
They can be. I brought in some plans before, because we're looking at affordable housing as minimizing the size of the lot. In Rapid, that's what we do. We do a 50-foot frontage. And if you've ever been through Johnson Ranch, which is kind of out off East 44, it's a new development, and they're selling them as fast as they build them. They're little, they're nice homes, but they're kind of cookie cutter. When you have a 50-foot frontage there, they got a waiver down to a 5,000 square foot lot, which is just kind of what the idea I used. I want to make these very affordable. That's just what we need all through the hills, in Rapid City as well. We just don't have houses under 200, so we can keep them 200, maybe a little under. And they're kind of doing with 1 car, 1.5 car, 2-car garages. And what you do is in the front, if you put a 2-car garage, you have a small window and a door and a garage. Because you only have about, a 50-foot lot. They got 6-foot setbacks there, so what's that, 12-foot off? They only have 38 foot for the house. So that you kind of give up stuff,
Yeah.
And so I see that the people have a choice. If they want a 1-car garage, they get a bigger front, so to speak. 2-car garage, the front gets a little smaller. So I see them, all the way from 10 to 12 to 16-foot garages, and just modifying design to meet the people's needs. And, and I got to tell you, I look at it and say, wow, people are buying those houses. They're buying them as fast as they can put them up, because they're affordable. I guess, my mindset's a little different, but for people that really want a home and can't afford the starting home now, which is probably $250 to $300 in Rapid City or the area, Box Elder, all those places, this is a whole subset of possibilities. And what we've talked about with economic development is that's where they think this is. We need homes for elderly people that can afford them, for school teachers that can afford them, for young couples that can afford them. That's how we're looking at this. I'm even talking to Brett a little bit about, and it's all up for discussion, mini homes. I'm kind of we don't have any in this region, and they're all over the country. They're popping up on little 2,500 square foot lots with a 500, 400, 500, 600 square foot house. Maybe just a carport or one car garage. A very small lot, but very affordable, under $100,000. An $18,000 lot that's there and very affordable. I don't know how the city's going to receive that. That's open for discussion. Just last week I called Brett and said, Brett, I'm looking at this and I got a brainstorm. What do you think about that? And I just talked to Common Bond, who develops affordable housing in the cities and a lot of cities in the Midwest. And they said, it's a heck of an idea. You will sell them like hotcakes because people just want a home they call their own that's affordable, And that's kind of what I'm thinking, but it hasn't been tried, frankly, in this region at all. Rapid City's really working on the possibility. What would it look like? How would we incorporate it into a development? And they're looking at like 100, I think, out behind Menards. I mean, that developer's pretty aggressive, but he just says these are selling like crazy all over the country. People just want a home. They call their own, They have sometimes they have a common parking area even, which is kind of insane, but in a little cul-de-sac, and you can envision lots of things if you get on the internet.
Well, what you've described, it kind of addresses the cookie cutter. I mean,
Yeah, that's pretty cookie cutter.
Breaks it up more and more variety. So.
But you can vary the fronts. If you go out to, I encourage, I don't know if economic development people went out there and looked at Johnson Siding, because it's amazing. And we're developing all those lots for that developer. We're not building the homes. We can't develop them fast enough. They're standing in line. I'm just like, wow. That guy hit a market space that just is untapped in Rapid City. And we're doing it at Raider Point. We also have one out to the air base. They're a little higher price point. They're 180 to maybe 210 on a $35,000 lot. And the guy started building, and we opened the lots in March, and we've sold like 32 out of 50. And he just called me today, and he says, we're going to be out of lots in maybe February or March. You're going to build some more because we have room for 120. But we're in a marketplace where the price point is such that more people can afford them, for our community. So that's another example, And they're 60-foot lots. They're just a little bit bigger, a little bit more expensive, but out there, that's still a lower priced home than most people are. 230 to 270, 280, out there around Box Elder. I think this is a lot more desirable than Box Elder from my point of view, but what do I know, I think people would want to live here if they given the opportunity.
I know a lot of people don't like to hear about back east and people who were transplanted here, but I raised 2 kids in a 60 by 120 lot, 1,800 square feet, 2-car garage. I mean, it's a place to plant your roots. Might be a starter home. We had a neighbor next door, elderly person moved in. They wanted a smaller lot to take care of. They could do their little garden, had a place for the dog, had a place for their vehicle, and that's enough. That's enough for a lot of people. And, when you look out at Hill City, when you have a small house or you have a small yard, you got a playground that's within, a 5-minute drive, you're in Forest Service. So you want to go out and play and have acreage to roam, you've got it here. So I think it's putting a roof overhead, safe place for families to be raised. I think it's fabulous. That's my opinion.
Well, that's the risk, when he said only 2 houses have sold under 220,000 in the area, literally in a year. I said, oh, really? 3? And there's like 1 on the market, I'm like, is that good or is that bad? Is there buyers out there? Then they say they got all these people that signed up and they're interested in the home, and because my risk is I got to sell these things. The lots don't do me any good. I got to sell houses. So it's interesting, but I guess I've convinced myself. I think the market is here. I think people will come here. That people will want to live here. They want to buy. It's a really fun community. It's got great schools. People move here from the school system, I think.
So I have a kind of a follow-up to, we were talking about this road and the cost of it. Let's just say it was $300,000 or $400,000. this is more of the financial question of it, you know, if that were the proper fit and fix, and it made sense to do it, which, again, I have my doubts about that, but let's say we did it, and we said, hey, Toby, we want to add $400,000 more infrastructure work into this project. What is are we still within our capacity? Because I know we can't exceed 10%. You know.
It's not so much the capacity as is the repayment ability.
Okay.
And so you're already stretching it, I think, to get to the 2 million, because that 2 million would first have to get paid back to Jim. It's where your 400,000 would fit within that. The other hard part is once you approve a TIF in that amount, you can go down, but you can't really go up. You have to get it recertified with Department of Revenue, then you risk losing whatever increment and so forth. So, no, you try to look at it right now, and even if everything comes into full projections this time and it goes perfect, that TIF in total is only going to generate 2.3 million. And so you take out your 2 million plus that are 300,000 or 400 that has no interest component to it, I don't think you could fit it in.
Okay. So there was another, when I was sitting here thinking about it, there was another reason why we didn't include it, because it's not, we're developing right of way. And we're not going to see an increment off of it to help pay off the cost of it.
Correct.
That was the other piece of it. So I just wanted to come full circle on that. Thank you.
I don't know how many of you remember, but about 2 years ago, I circulated a little paper that my daughter-in-law did on tiny houses and doing planned unit development on existing lots to construct what may be 2 houses and turn it into 6 tiny houses. So I think there's definitely some possibilities there.
I'm not sure, has Pennington County just okayed something along that line for the tiny houses?
Rapid City was looking at ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and allowing them on larger lots, which is something that you guys have expressed an interest in.
Yeah, and the EDC has said they have other options they want to look at after this.
You know, some of those tiny home communities are really cute. I mean, there's this one of artists, which, but I mean, it was just beautiful. And they have this common area where they all get together, and you know, they have, you know, big community meals and stuff. And you know, for a single person, you know, don't want to take care of the house, don't want to take care of a big yard, but want a little place to put a garden and, you know, bed and kitchen and bathroom, and that's enough.
But that could be promoted for private investment.
Nick?
Say, just wanted to kick out there, and I don't know if everybody knows of Skull Construction, you know, after Raleigh had a testimony a little while ago. I have similar testimony that, you know, for 25, 30 years, top-notch, everything related to Jim Skull. That's just the way it is, and I am proud when anybody asks. I always remind them, there's 2 or 3 people in Hill City that I always remind them, if it's in the circumstance of the conversation, Jim is a Hill City resident. I don't know whether all of you know that or not, but Jim's a Hill City guy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Just 6-7 miles outside of town.
Okay, any other questions for Toby?
So I don't necessarily have a question, but just something I'd like to address and make sure everybody's aware of. So we're talking about the overall putting houses up here, and that's a great thing. What we also need to look at really hard with this is $1.2 million of infrastructure, okay? The payback would be through the incremental difference and a big risk that Jim is taking. For us to be able to actually move forward and do this $1.2 million without this opportunity to do it this way would be difficult. You know that while we have all the big problems of a big city, we have a small budget and small dollars that come in. And any way that we can find things that will help us improve our city infrastructure is something that's worth looking at. In this particular case, it almost feels like a credit card that I'd never have to make a payment on. We're getting looping. We're getting something extremely important to our community. I mean, right now, we have situations because we don't have that. If something happens and we either take water down or there's a break, we could lose water to 3/4 of the town. So this is something that's extremely important for our future growth and for our infrastructure. And when you look at the dollars that are associated with this, it would be very difficult for us to even plan on how we budget these kind of changes in the next several years. So from that perspective, I urge planning and zoning to look at that aspect as well, okay? We're talking about a lot of numbers and it sounds like a lot of dollars, but in this particular situation, you're not really coming up with any down payment on the car. We're getting the car. So I just thought I'd add that for consideration. And I don't know if I'd feel the same way if it was anybody other than Jim Scull. Because although I don't have the deep-rooted relationships that everyone does, I agree. This is a partnership, okay? This is a partnership between our city, our community, and Mr. Scull. And Mr. Scull has consistently done very many things for our community, and a lot of them go unnoticed and unseen. It really shows his character and should really help raise the comfort level of everyone as we try to get in and make this move forward. So thank you, Jim.
Karen, you talked about development, I guess we did, Harney Mountain Wilderness Estates. I'm really proud of it. I love it. I wish I could live there.
You don't. You got the best spot.
I got a pretty nice house, though, yeah. I got a nice piece of ground. But we did, I point out, we're doing some high-end lots. They start at about 85,000, go up to 300,000. West of Rapid City, it's a really pristine property. The developer came to us and asked us to put that together. I've done about 75 lots around the golf course in Spearfish. It's all but about 15 are sold. I've done that Raider Point project out there. And my company probably does 80% of the housing development work for other developers in Rapid City. It's because of, I guess, we price point and quality of work. We work very well with the city, so we are very experienced in doing this. I don't know why we get all that work, I guess, because we get it done and it's quality and people like to work with us. So we're probably doing 80% of the housing development work in Rapid City right now.
You even did a cute little house up in Rochford.
The what?
A little house up in Rochford off of 238.
We did that? Yeah.
Yeah, my husband, we were right there, our house was there and nobody could find it, so do the four-wheeler, take him up to the house. Well, this one was cute.
Okay, Dobie, do you have anything else to add?
No, just the resolution that's before you, Chairman.
Anyone else to speak? This is a public hearing, so we do need to open it up to any other questions.
I'd
Dan?
just like to publicly thank, hopefully all of you, Jim Scull. Without this, it couldn't
I've overcome a few hurdles, I'll tell you that.
I would also like to make note that the realtors in town really supported this project. Dan himself and his company gave up all their commissions on the sale, and the broker on the other side, Kim Benning, gave up half of his.
Wow.
So, that's a substantial amount of money for these guys to give up, and they did it because they want to see this go. Fort Hill City.
Any other comments from the public? So at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Danny, what about this? Is this something we need to read into the minutes that was in our packet?
No, it'll be included in, but you do have to do your vote.
All right, I will entertain a motion regarding the tax increment financing district number 2.
I make a motion.
Okay, could you state your motion, please, Connie?
My motion to accept or approve the proposed tax increment district number 2. Is that what how you
To
want?
send, we're recommending acceptance to the city council.
To the city council, yeah.
Is that correct?
In acceptance of the boundaries of TIF District Number 2.
Okay. All right, second. All right, Connie has made the motion to approve. Raleigh has seconded. Do I hear any other discussion? Roll call vote?
Connie Walters,
Yay.
Raleigh Mills,
Yes.
Dale Householder,
Yes.
Ron Walker,
Yes.
Keith Van Ness.
Yes.
Motion approved. Okay. We thank everybody for their involvement in getting this thing done. It's going to be a tremendous project for Hill City and the residents. Thank you. Okay, that concludes action items. We move on to reports.
I just want to say Brett worked pretty hard on it too. We had a few words to get through, didn't we, Brett?
Yeah, a couple of head scratchers, yeah. Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, commissioners, we'll start with Keith.
See, I don't have any at this time.
Nope, I don't either. That's quick. P&Z liaison.
So I'll be as quick as I can. I did notice that I believe everyone was at the last city council meeting. So thank you for your interest in coming to the council meeting. There was something that was mentioned at that council meeting that I'd just like to repeat so you understand that. We had some conversations relative to outreach, and someone had said just send a letter out to all the registered businesses. We don't have a business registry. So I believe that is a potential project, not just from an information perspective, but also from a safety perspective. If we have something happen, it would be nice if we had the means to notify not who the water bill gets sent to, but who the people are that are actually residing in those businesses. So, and I would like to commend the commission for all the hard work that they did with that. We'll work through the other desired information that's needed. So thank you.
And the requested hearings have been set for the dates again, for the record?
This Thursday is one of them.
This Thursday?
This Thursday, the 21st, and then December 4th.
That's at what time?
10 a.m. on the
10.
21st, and then 7 p.m. on December 4th.
December 4th. That's at the request of the city council.
Correct. And then ads were placed in the Rapid City Journal outlining all the changes. That's going to run for 4 days next week, advertising the public meeting dates as well. Snail mail went to every commercial property owner within city limits. Those have been started to be received already because I'm getting phone calls. 2 email blasts went out, one with Lorena's list, because she has a list specifically to businesses, and then the chamber also sent another email blast out, and then we have it up on the website, all the changes, proposed changes, so.
So it will be very well publicized. All right. Danny.
Okay, a lot of inspections. 622 Major Lake Drive, there was a wallboard inspection. Everything went well. 257 Main, Things That Rock. They're building that second story on the back of the building. Everything is good. The contractor neglected to call for the draft and fire stop and the insulation inspection, but he was very agreeable to pulling down some wallboard so that I could see and pulling out some things so I could see it. So I'm satisfied with the work that he's doing. 186 North Newton, we had a footings and then a wall inspection. Those both went well. I'm still waiting on the final electrical inspection for phase 2 completion at the cafe. And Wally is pheasant hunting. So, not sure what the hurry was with that, but the fire hall, the framing for the new overhead rear door is done. I'm waiting on the door installer. 352 Pine Mountain, we've had some issues. We've had 3 contractors in the last as many weeks. Met with another new one this morning, and I think this one's a keeper. I've talked to the property owner as well. It's really bad in there, really, really bad in there. There's some structural issues that he is going to be addressing. So kind of went through both the bottom unit, well, the bottom level and then up at the top. And he's actually has to pull a lot of the work done by the previous contractor's staff because they never had the rough-in electrical inspection and they were putting up drywall and paneling in some areas. So He's taking ownership of it, he's going to be removing it, and so we're going to move forward. Hopefully this guy is a keeper. We talked about Mayor talked about the first reading of the sign ordinance amendment. I've let you know the additional outreach that was done. Regarding the Lamar advertising signs, I've spoken with Terry, who's the sales manager for Lamar. He has been looking. He can't find any permits either. So he said there was one other location he needed to check. He says, how quick do you need this? I says, in the next couple of weeks is fine. We just want a resolution on this question. One property owner called me from Spearfish, who has the little piece right by Kroll's where that one Lamar billboard is. She's putting it off on the previous owner of the property, which was Matkins. And so Chris even came in, and Chris is like, I'm looking, trying to find something. So the people who would know are on it. But I've exhausted everything here within City Hall, within the state, and within the county. So I'm waiting to hear back from them. I'll keep you guys informed as to what I find. And that's it.
Okay. Brett?
Just real quick, I want to thank the commission and the liaisons and the mayor and Danny and Betsy for all the hard work on the sign ordinance revisions. So, I had my shot at reworking the sign code and the rest of Title IX, and it took years to get through. And I think you guys have been working on it for like 14 months, 12 months, something like that. I know you've done a lot of outreach. There's been a lot of public meetings, a lot of discussions, and you're really keying on some of the items that we knew needed to get fixed back in 2014, like the temporary banner permits. Back in 2014, we recognized that there were some trouble spots in the code that if we dug into them, we didn't have enough traction at the time to get them solved. And by not having traction on those topics, it would have kept the whole code, the rest of the code, from getting adopted and changed. And so now you're coming back, and this is exactly what I had envisioned, is that as a group, you're coming back and polishing up those spots of that code. And you're hitting the spots that I thought had some challenges to them and needed some polishing on them. And so I just want to say thank you, because you guys are continuing the work that happened 5 years ago now, and it's amazing how time flies. But the code will never be perfect. It will never be perfect. It's a living document, but it needs that attention that you guys have given it. So I just appreciate you. So thank you.
I'd like to add too that we're working on those stipulations too, but also in 2017 the comprehensive plan came out, and a lot of our discussions on changes had to do with what the residents and the merchants and the community wanted. And I'm hoping that when we have these outreach meetings, that we have the community, the residents, and the merchants at these meetings for their vision for the city.
I've been keeping a list of comments, so as I get phone calls in, emails, I'll read verbatim. Phone calls, it's just going to be, for or against, or, good for you, why am I getting this letter? Whatever the comments are. So.
One question, Mayor.
Yes.
Are these official meetings?
Official, the outreach meetings?
Since they were discretion, or at the call, what do I want to say? The council's direction, they be conducted?
So you raise a good question. I'm not in a position to allocate any money or make any kind of appropriation for money. That's not my role. I believe that would be a fair question to ask the council, as they are the ones that would be in a position to make that decision, because there is money that's involved in it.
They were asked.
Pardon?
They were asked at the council meeting, they begged off on it.
And they begged off on it. So not answering it is not an answer. So it should be addressed again.
It just needs to be clarified one way or the other.
Yep, should be addressed
So then
again.
we call the meeting to order and have it going and whatever. So,
Yep.
all right, we're adjourned.